Trinidad and Tobago is today a highly respected oil producer on the world stage and a center of excellence for natural gas development. There are many unexplored tracts which have the potential to significantly add to the country's reserves, but the actual history of Trinidad and Tobago's production bubbles to life in the legend of the Pitch Lake. Many myths exist about the creation of the Pitch Lake, dating back to the 16th century, when the lake was known as Piche by the Amerindians who ruled the land. One such legend says that the Kaima village near Le Bray was swallowed up in retribution for the Amerindian sacrilegious feasting on the sacred hummingbird. When British explorer Sir Walter Raleigh discovered the Pitch Lake in 1595, it became a source of new triumph for him after many years in search of the yellow gold of El Dorado. The pitch he found in the lake proved far superior for caulking ships, better than any European variety.
Pitch oil, which ultimately came out of the petroleum industry, came out of the Pitch Lake, was really one of those things that altered the course of history, altered how things were done, changed the outlook, and made things very, very differently. Another significant milestone in the timeline, if you like, is the experiments that were done by Walter Darwent. He was brought to Trinidad for the purpose of drilling for oil, and he drilled for oil at Aripero Estate in South Trinidad, and this was where the first oil well came in.
More important than that is the ordinary man who was there at the beginning of the Darwent well, which we contend in Trinidad is really truly the first commercial well produced in the world. A lot of people don't know that. We need to spend some time and effort really qualifying that and debunking that. It's ours. We were in the industry before some of the people out there. So we believe we had the first well. It's not the Drake well, it's the Darwent well.
Darwent died as a relatively young man, by the age of 40, and his oil drilling attempts were really more or less forgotten. By the 1900s, oil again came to the surface, so to speak, literally, because of a hunter whose name is not remembered, discovering Darwent's oil well. Now, he told this to Mr. Pantin, who was the guy who owned an estate nearby, who in turn told it to Mr. Rust, and Mr. Rust got in touch with a friend of his, a fellow called John Lelam, and they put together some money for the purpose of doing a little oil exploration.
The partnership worked out in such a way that Rust was to go and do most of the field work because his background gave him more of that capability. And my grandfather did virtually all the early financing. And that was the involvement that gave, I would say, potential for the oil industry to grow. They were fairly successful in terms of the production and the early wells compared to the ones that preceded them.
The age of cars and boats and planes was dawning, and these futuristic machines needed fuel. Trinidad's oil industry was to be given a boost by Sir Winston Churchill's decision to convert the fuel used by the Royal Navy from coal to oil. By the booming 1920s, Trinidad and Tobago was the British Empire's largest oil producer. While oil radically altered Trinidad and Tobago's economy, quality of life, infrastructure and intellectual capital, the Great Depression of the 1930s highlighted appalling working conditions in the oil fields. The resulting labor unrest was a catalyst in spawning labor and trade union activism led by figures like the charismatic Tubal Uriah Butler, who led the famous strike on June 19, 1937, in protest of exploitation in the oil fields. Butler received great support from Adrian Rienzi, the founder of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union. World events would propel Trinidad and Tobago's oil industry into history with the outbreak of the Second World War. Germany's aggressive rearmament in the 1930s and subsequent invasion of Europe threatened both democracy and world freedom. Experiments to produce high-octane aviation fuel at Pointe-à-Pierre catapulted Trinidad's oil industry into the front line.
So we were not only producing the oil, but we were flying the planes. Flying on Trinidad oil was a turn of phrase that was used by these young men who were flying these aircraft in the Battle of Britain. One could say without a doubt that Trinidad's oil contributed significantly to the winning of the Battle of Britain.
100 years after the first discovery of foreign investment in the petrochemicals industry,